Hi, my name is Pop. This is video number 2 in how to write a novel and publish it on Amazon Kindle. And on this video I'm going to be demonstrating another book besides the one that I showed on the prior video. This folder right here on my laptop shows all the different files that I've got regarding the book. I have many different things that I worked on simultaneously, and I originally wrote it years ago in DOS, and it has a TXT ending on it. And then, about 5 years ago, I switched over to Linux Ubuntu, and I'm now using LibreOffice.org, and I'm using their word processor called Writer. They've also got a spreadsheet. It's called Calc, and then they've got a database, a drawing program, and a presentation program. The presentation program is what I use to make the cover of the book. My cover is not very good. I do not recommend that you do this. I think that you should have a photograph or a very nice painting, and if you do something simple like this, you are really doing yourself a disservice. The sales of the book, I think, are not going to be as good when you have a simple cover like this. It should at least have some people in it. It should have something recognizable. I'm going to open up the word processor program that gives a description of this. This is a science fiction type story. It's an apocalyptic type story, and the background of it is interesting in that, well, it comes out of my own background. I'll just read it real quick. Science fiction dystopian apocalyptic medical thriller. An abandoned experimental cancer treatment begins being used illegally as a recreational drug due to its power to suppress the need for sleep and its enhancement of mental state. Despite the danger of long-term usage causing death from heart attack, 2-beta-somatine sweeps across society and changes the world into a dystopian totalitarian state. The few who cannot or refuse to take the drug, called rejectors and sleepers, become an oppressed minority who cannot easily accommodate to the standard 120-hour work week. Well, when I was going to college in Waco, Texas at Baylor University, I worked 4 hours a day at the VA mental hospital, and I got to see hospitals. And I now live in Houston, Texas, which has one of the biggest hospital complexes that you have ever seen. The big one is MD Anderson, the Cancer Treatment Center. In fact, the hospital area downtown in Houston, just by itself, a subset of Houston, it is much, much larger than most cities in the United States. There are hundreds of thousands of employees who work down there. It's just amazing. And I have had many relatives and many friends and some casual acquaintances who were at that hospital, and it got me to thinking. I also had a friend, my best friend, who got whacked on a motorcycle. And I went to pick it up, and the gas tank was ruptured, both of the wheels were deflated, the frame was pretzeled, and I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it that he wasn't dead. Well, he wasn't dead, and in fact he didn't even have any broken bones, but I got to see a course of treatment that finally induced him to abandon his own career in conventional medicine, and he became a chiropractor. And I have that description in here. Well, I want to open up the story right here, the novel itself. And the novel itself is quite lengthy. It took me several years to write. I rewrote it, and rewrote it. You can see the hunks and chunks of it here. Every once in a while I would get religion and go back and write it, throw away whole reams of it, rewrite it, and then I would paint myself into a corner, start over again. 3 years later, 5 years later, 7 years later, there I am, still writing. And then ultimately you put it together and finish it, read it yourself. And such a thing, as lengthy as it is, even when you read it yourself, it takes a few days, unless you're a speed reader, and I'm not. And I would go through and say, well, you know what, I think this is wrong, and I would say it doesn't flow well, and I start over, and it just goes on and on and on like that. Let me open up the Navigator. I'm popping it open with a F5, and when you open up the Navigator, you just got to have that in a lengthy novel like this. If you tap on a chapter like this, the book will then go directly to that chapter. You see, that's how it works. And I don't have these numbered. And my convention in writing this one was to write so many chapters, each one just a few paragraphs long. And in this story, a guy gets cancer on his knee, and he goes to the hospital, and it's terminal. They're gonna tell him he doesn't have much time left. But there is an experimental treatment, and there's just hundreds of these experimental treatments going on, and they're double blind, and they're heart-wrenching, because when you sign up for that thing, you will either get the latest and greatest, or you will get a placebo. And nobody knows, not the doctor, not the nurse, not you, nobody knows who's getting the control group placebo and who's getting the real deal. And well, he goes in, and darn, the thing cures his cancer rapidly, and he's in a ward in the hospital, and several other people, they're getting cured also. And they go to the doctor and say, look, we know who's getting the real stuff, and you right now gotta know who's getting the real stuff, but we need to get these other people on it. Well, they break the biggest taboo, and they go ahead and they put everybody on it, and sure as shooting, everybody's cancer is cured. But there are side effects. The people do not need to sleep any longer. First, hardly at all, then not at all. They'll stay awake 3, 4, 5 days, and they start getting lactic acid pains in their heart muscle. And a few of them fall over dead from heart attacks. And a few of them accommodate to this by sitting in an easy chair, and they almost go into a hibernation type state where their hearts drop down to 30, 40 beats a minute. Well, ultimately, the doctors decide to shut down the whole thing and call it a failure, because more people are dying of the heart attacks than are being cured by the cancer. Everyone's actually being cured by the cancer, but not everybody survives the trip. But in the meantime, our hero, the protagonist, he's cured. And one of the people in the cancer group is a smoking radiologist. He's cured. And the guy who found the concoction, he himself is so disappointed that they shut it down. He goes home, he's depressed. But the thing about staying awake all night is just too enticing, and he makes a small batch for himself, and he decides to continue along this vein and perhaps even give it to a few of his friends. Meanwhile, the medical student who had been making the drugs for the group, he runs off to go to Stanford, where he goes to graduate school in medicine, and he decides to continue making a small batch, and he's selling it to nurses. It's sort of a super speed. Well, the rest of the book tells about how it illegally proliferates into society. It begins to disperse, first through organized crime, then through these renegade doctors, and by, the work week in the United States turns to 120 hours standard. and people are dropping like flies. Most people don't live beyond about 35 because, the old chicker just won't take it. And by, our hero, the protagonist of the story, he can't take it anymore. His liver has built up an intolerance and he has to get off. And so he is what is called a rejecter. And then there are people who philosophically and intellectually reject the idea of taking drugs to stay awake all the time. And they are called sleepers. So sleepers and rejectors become the pariahs of society, and they are a small oppressed minority. And they are given all the scut work and the crummy jobs, and they can't make enough money to live. And it goes on and on like that. And the end of it is quite interesting. It turns into a no-kidding worldwide dystopia. And dystopia, that has to do with Sir Thomas More's book, Utopia. I'm a sucker for the PDF file. I think they're so pretty. They've got headings on the top page, and you can't do that with most ebook readers. The PDFs don't flow, but I really do like them, and I've converted with one pop into PDF file for my own use. I would also occasionally convert from the ODT file, not to the PDF file, but also just go the heck ahead and make myself an EPUB. And when I made EPUBs, I would read them myself on my own phone, and I would pretend like I was somebody not familiar with it, and that's hard to do. And then you would sit there and read your own work, and you'd try to criticize it. When you're reading your own stuff, it's very hard to criticize. I mean, you understand it. You think it's great. You're reading it. It makes sense to you. There's beautiful imagery because, you created it. But are you deriving that imagery that you are reading from the printed word as someone else would do? Or are you deriving that imagery from your head? You just don't know when you're reading. It's really hard to judge your own stuff. It's impossible, in fact. Well, I've got the Mobi right here, and the Mobi is being put up by means of FB Reader, my favorite reader. I think that's the best one out there. And let's see what it looks like. I'm going to the first page, and let's see, we'll go to the next page. Let's see what it looks like here. It's very slow to load. I like to have a very plain look to it. I mean, I just do not see the point in having drop caps and lots of pictures and things like that. After you send in a book to Kindle, you can go online and you can change anything you want to. They assign it this unique number. It's sort of like with a computer. Every time you load a computer up with its operating system, or every time you hook up a printer, there's a unique number that is assigned to it. And you can see when you look it up all the titles and how they are doing, and you can change the price, you can add pictures later, you can do all kinds of stuff. You can add this KDP Select. KDP Select is the enhanced deal they've got. There's a report you can go to that shows how many you sold this month, prior 6 weeks, last month, all the way back for years and years. You can even download the report, and they'll show you how many you sold, how much money you made, all kinds of stuff like that. It's very interesting to go online, and I don't know what that is, but people like to look at things like this that they have created. I don't know if that's a sort of voyeurism in the mirror or vanity. I'm not sure what that is. I enjoy writing, and I've always wanted to do this, and I put the books online, and we'll see how they do. I haven't had them up there that long, and the book that I am talking about today is right here. you doubt yourself. You say, well, did I pick the right title? Is it too long? Perhaps I should have put it in third person instead of first person, or vice versa. Or, maybe I should have de-emphasized that one whole chapter at the beginning. And you deliberate over and over again about how you started it out, because that's what hooks a guy when he starts reading a book. I don't know about you, but when I go to the bookstore and I'll pick up a book and I'll read the inside cover, and then I'll read the back cover, and then I'll look at the picture, and then I'll start reading a few pages, and that's very often what makes me decide to buy the book, if I am hooked right then and there after looking at it a little bit. This thing right here, you can go online and read the first few pages of it. When you tap on it, it says click to look inside, and it'll show you what the thing looks like for the first few pages. I think they give you 10% of the book. And here we go. It's not the best ebook reader online, but you can make the thing zoom in and zoom out. And you can go from page to page. The font is good. And I assume this is what people get when they buy the book. Of course, you don't buy your own book, right? I mean, you've got that anyway, and then you give it to your friends. But this looks good enough for me. I notice on this one, I changed it around a little bit. The first paragraph, the first line of the first paragraph is indented. I changed that. There's a default where, for some reason, they do not indent the first line of the first paragraph of a section. When you get to the end of the thing that they let you read free, they ask you if you want to buy it or if you want to go back. And if you go right back, they ask you again if you want to buy it. So I mean, that's what they're in business for. And there are a whole bunch of details here when you put a book up that you'll want to read about, whether or not you think that you are giving yourself as much advertisement as you possibly can. Well, that's pretty much all I got. My name is Pop, and I thank you very much. I invite you to read this book. It's a good story.